So welcome, Product, and welcome, Dominic. I appreciate you guys being up on stage with me here today. So I'm going to start real quick with a couple of stats out here, kind of set the stage for you all. When you look at from a market dynamics perspective of what the employee looking for, what we see and what the different analysts out there are seeing is that employees coming back from COVID and being able to work from home are still a little bit reluctant to want to come back to an office environment for that. So corporations are figuring out, and organizations are trying to figure out of how do we entice people to come back to work? Because when you look at the organizations themselves and what they're saying, they're really focused on getting people back to the office for a number of reasons. A lot of it is around collaborations. That's what we're going to be talking about today is how do we entice those employees to want to come back to the office, whether it's full-time or just part-time from that, and how do the solutions from Microsoft and Cisco help with that, helping organizations move people back to the office. So start with a quick question for my panel on stage here. When you think about working from home, first of all, how long have you worked remotely and not in office? I'll start with you, Dominic.
I've been remote for about 7 years now total.
Okay.
So I've been hanging out at home quite a bit, but I do come into offices. I work with a lot of customers and things like that. Right. So while not technically a hybrid employee, feel like one sometimes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So what is your guilty pleasure working from home? What do you like most about working remotely?
I've got a pretty great setup. People, did I lose my mic? There it is. When people see my desk in my office at home, they're like, it looks like a command central. I've got a nice standing desk, my monitors. I've got a Razer Black Widow keyboard for any gamers out there. So, just really nice setup that is really comfortable and easy to use. And I love it.
Right. Okay, so now if I think about going to the office, what do you like most about coming into the office?
You know what? I think it's building some of the relationships and some of the pieces that you don't get day to day sitting at your own desk. So, I mean, you can build community, you can build relationships, and you have to be purposeful about it when you're hybrid. But it's a lot easier when you're just going to lunch with people and things like that. So there's a lot of convenience there with that process.
Great. Product, same for you. How long have you been working remotely?
22 years.
Yeah. And I noticed from your bio, you worked in Singapore for over 10 years, right?
I did. Just moved back to bed 10 months ago.
Wow.
So it's interesting, but I got to say, right, so being sort of remote first, even at Cisco, right? So we're a remote first company, and I truly sort of believe that that's the way to go. I don't have a command center set up, but it's sort of practically it works. But you hear about all these stories in terms of, no commute time, et cetera, and being able to focus and sort of get stuff done. But the purpose built is what, Dominic highlighted. I think it's critical. I remember when I was in Singapore, actually, I had a manager say, no, everybody has to come back in 2 days a week, right? And you're starting to hear a lot more of that even now, where it's 2 days, 4 days, or even 5 days, right? We're hearing about as well. And the challenge with that is you'd sort of rock up to the office and there was no one there, or if you did, you were just sitting there doing calls. Right. And that was absolutely frustrating. But it comes down to the manager as well, right? So a lot of times they sort of say, no, it's got to be a team building thing, but it's not. So I think there's got to be a lot of focus on being sort of purpose and practical about why you want people in and what an experience looks like.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So for both of you, it's definitely sounds like it's the home office and it's going into the organization's office, but a lot of it's probably on the road as well. So Product, what type of tools are you using from a collaboration perspective and hybrid work and AI perspective to make you more capable and more included when you are working remotely?
That's a great question, right? So when you think about Cisco, obviously as Cisco, we're a WebEx shop, right?
Yep.
But we also, because we're doing a lot with Microsoft now, I also use Teams. That's I collaborate with our friends at Microsoft. And being ex-Microsoft after 19 years, I did a lot of Teams, right? So when I came over, it took me a little while to sort of transition through. But the beauty about it is it comes down to experience, right?
Right.
So as you look at the collaboration suite from a remote perspective, or as we now move into sort of the meeting rooms aspect of the conversations, right, as people go back, there's this big focus on what's the best experience both for the remote attendee as well as those in the room. And that's where I think Cisco truly plays really well. And we've heard a lot about AI this morning, and this sort of textual-based AI is natural language, et cetera. But where Cisco's done really well is we've come out with these real-time models, right, which is media models based on audio and video and making sure that that experience is the best available, regardless of platform, right? And then the other one you talk about is when you're sort of remote, a lot of you raise your hands on this multi-platform, right? We actually have research that says 90+% of companies have multiple platforms. So at Cisco, what we've done really well is we truly believe we have the best interop solution in the market today, right? So if you're running our Cisco Room OS as an example, you can join a WebEx meeting, a Teams meeting, a Google meeting, or a Zoom meeting, right?
Right.
Single touch of a button. And that's sort of our motto, right? We call it the North Star, or basically what we're saying is within 10 seconds, you should be able to join a meeting, right? So that, to your point, is regardless of where you are, how you're joining, what platform you're joining, you want to make sure that you can join seamlessly and you have the best experience regardless of whether you're in the room or remote.
Right. So same question for you, Dominic. What type of AI tools are you using to be more productive?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously being in the Microsoft space quite a bit, Teams meetings are the key piece there. That's the cornerstone of everything we're doing.
Right.
And to your point, the experience is beautiful. I remember 10 years ago, even coming from an organization that was using WebEx meetings, joining Cisco meeting rooms was difficult. and now it's so beautiful. I can touch and add in. But the experience has just completely changed. I love how particularly Teams allows us to be able to see the conference room in a little bigger window. So it's a little bit more realistic. We can start to connect. And then what I'm loving to see is how Copilot is enhancing that experience and some of the AI tools that are coming out of it. So one thing we were talking about that it's a fairly new feature, and your mileage may vary as you're trying this out, but it's only going to get better. Is before with Copilot, when you would assign an action item, what would happen is the conference room would get the action item if they were in there, which was fantastic for me because I have enough in action items already. So let the conference room take it in the meeting summary from Copilot. I don't need to do that. But now we're actually able to start to see it's recognizing your face, it's recognizing your voice, and now it's starting to connect that. So now instead of in the meeting, I have to say, Mike, you have this action item, right? It's now picking up and it says, oh, Dominic said he would take this action item and he's in the room and we know it's his voice and it's capturing that. And to me, that's making the meeting experience better. I'm not focused on taking notes. I'm rather engaged. And instead of breaking the meeting flow to ask a question to get caught up on something I missed, I use Copilot right there in the chat and I ask a question. And I said, well, what did we just talk about, right? What was that one-touch experience? What are the multiple platforms that you mentioned with that one-touch experience? Instead of stopping the whole meeting, I just ask the question and it brings it back for me, which is beautiful.
Which I think goes into the next thing I was going to focus on, which is now we're seeing an inequity in the in-office user. Like we're all used to working remote and having our own screen and being attributed to ourselves when we're talking. We know who it is and we can see each person in a different frame, whether it's in Teams or in WebEx or Zoom. For those solutions, we can see that individual in that frame. Now we're going to a work environment where you might be in a large meeting room. So both Cisco and Microsoft have been working very closely together to figure out how, understanding that people are going to have a mixed environment. It's not going to be all Teams and it's not going to be all WebEx. And the hardware, Cisco makes the best hardware out there when it comes to the meeting room solutions. So start with you, product. Can you talk a little bit about how you are partnering with Microsoft to create that seamless solution?
Sure. So I got to say, right, I'm sure most people in the room probably chuckled when they heard about Cisco and Microsoft in the same sentence, right? So the truth of the matter is about 2 years ago, all our major customers essentially came to both companies and said, hey, you need to get together, right? We've sort of we've made that decision to go to Teams, but we still love Cisco hardware, right? And the truth of the matter is it's true. So about 2 years ago, 2.5 now, we made this announcement that all our portfolio, entire portfolio is certified to run Microsoft Teams rooms natively, right? So about 12 months ago, we came out with a new portfolio, everything from your small to huddle space, all the way to your large complex rooms, divisible rooms, lecture halls, classrooms, etc. And if you haven't seen it, by the way, we've just announced something called the Workspace Designer Tool. So just look it up online. It's free for all customers and partners. We can actually design all your spaces, and we give you the specs and the BOM. So check that out as well. But from a Microsoft perspective, right, we're now the fastest growing manufacturer for Microsoft Teams rooms in the market, right? Quarter on quarter, we've been growing in triple digits. And that goes to the reason, you sort of bring up is customers truly believe, Cisco does have the best hardware. Like I remember having a conversation where they say, hey, we haven't touched those devices in 5 years. Now, good and bad, right? Because now we have all these old devices that are out there. And we actually have a few that are coming into support on June 1 with the SX and DX, right? So if you have those, please talk to your SHI team and Cisco team to upgrade them. But what's really differentiated us is we've also looked at Microsoft Teams Rooms on Android as that platform, right? So if you know with Teams Rooms, you have Windows and Android. And Cisco sort of decided to bet big on Android, and currently 70% of all customers are using MTR on Android. And why are we different is we actually are the only manufacturer that was allowed to virtualize Android. So we actually take MTR on Android, virtualize it in a container and run it on top of our Cisco Room OS, right, which is tried and trusted. So when you plug in a Cisco device, you don't see Android on the network. So it's super secure, right? So that's the number one ask for all of you is, hey, we want a secure solution, right? Then the second one is easy to manage. So we also have this amazing platform with our management solution called Control Hub that allows you visibility into all the devices, including Teams. We also have Thousand Eyes, which are our observability platform, which allows you visibility real time on the call health, right? I can literally go in and see from the endpoint all the way to the cloud as to what the status is. And then the last one is sort of that experience, right? And that's where our AI comes in, whether it's noise removal versus suppression, whether it's our people framing capabilities or our ability to do what we call cross view, which is regardless of where you are in the room or where you're looking, the camera's always picking you up face first, right? So your remote attendees have that best experience. And then we do things like chat and everything else. And from Microsoft perspective, you'll continue to see parity from Windows to Android. You're also going to start to see more things coming soon in terms of facilitator that you just talked about, just landed on Android as well, so that'll be available. So that's where it gets really interesting now, right? So our engineering teams are super aligned. We've got some great announcements coming up, as you know, in the next couple of months as well. We support wide formats for that best experience, whether it's front row and what that looks like. We also do large screens with Samsung. We just announced a 138-inch display. So think about that experience again, right? And how we're able to scale to that model as well. So key focus to the summary, right? So what this partnership's done for us is, one, we're going to customers to say, hey, we can now support you. Two, Cisco is not just an endpoint company, right? We're not just video. So we do, obviously, we have security, networking, we do data centers. And we also have something called Spaces.
Yes.
Right? So there's this whole Microsoft Places, Cisco Spaces. We sort of work together, but think about Spaces as your ability to now manage your workspace, your entire buildings and everything else, and we integrate in. And it's being able to then sort of integrate that with all the endpoints that have sensors built into it. So I now know how many people are in a room, whether they're in a meeting or not, the utilization, things like ambient noise, et cetera, and it all gets captured in an analytic form that you can actually go and pull up and say, hey, am I making the right choices, right?
Right.
So we actually reduced our workspace by almost 25%, right? New York's a great example. We consolidated 100 offices into 3. Right. To save a ton of money in ROI, and all these reports are readily available. And that's the beauty, I think, of this partnership and how we can now go to customers and say, hey, we meet you where you're at. You're running Microsoft Teams, great. We do this. And we run it natively, right? So you literally run natively. And the other last point I'll make is you're all multi-platform, right? So if you're running Cisco devices in Microsoft Teams rooms, you can now join a WebEx meeting with a click of a button without a reboot, and you get the full rich experience. I can now do the same with Zoom CRC, and I'll share content dual screen again without a reboot. Right? And those are sort of critical things that differentiate us from anybody else in the market.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, and I think the meeting rooms themselves are getting much more sophisticated and purpose designed based on the hardware for the space, instead of just throwing the same hardware in every space. More sophisticated devices, like you were talking about, that we're definitely seeing that move to making sure that it's the right hardware for the right environment for that. And then the Cisco Spaces is huge. We definitely are seeing a big uptake of that, and then Microsoft's got their solution in that as well.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't want to gloss over what you said there, because I think it was really huge with being able to look at the infinite battle, I think, that facilities runs into with an office place is, do I have enough conference rooms? Are they sized right? And what about desks? So it's been about 10 years ago, I worked for an organization that they had an office in Canada, and they decided they were going to do the grand experiment of hybrid workspaces. So you were going to come in 2 days a week, and you had to share a desk with somebody. So there was no sophisticated way to book a hotel desk or anything like that. But that was the move. And it was huge because, number one, employees on average reclaimed 6 hours a week in commute time because they only came into the office 2 days a week. So the employee's really happy. But who really was happy was the bottom line because they knocked their footprint in half in their facilities. So being able to know, do I have the right conference rooms? Do I have the right spaces? And think about that from a perspective. It's not technically your budget, but if we talk about IT as a business or being strategic with different parts of the organization, that's a huge win. If you can knock out, what would you say, 25%?
Yeah.
25% of your operating costs for facilities?
Correct.
I'm sure that's not cheap, especially in New York City.
Yeah. And we can share data, right? But the other thing I sort of add on to that is it's sort of when you look at this sort of commute cost, right? The other big thing, and we're hearing about this with some big financial ones in New York City, right? Where they're saying, hey, you got to come back to the office. And we're realizing that people did downsize. And now people are rocking up to the office and there's nowhere to sit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So hot desking is becoming big. And the other one we've also noticed is traditionally, when you look at sort of IT and infrastructure from a team's perspective, and then you had sort of facilities doing meeting spaces and rooms, and then you had sort of workspace or a different group, real estate, right, looking after the rest of it. And we've actually had examples where customers have spent millions of dollars in sensors to capture some of this data, not knowing that IT had just bought a bunch of Cisco gear that had the sensors built into it, right? So we had a customer in EMEA where literally $18 million they could have saved.
Yeah.
Right. With the same sensors that were built in. So great opportunity here for everybody is, right, make sure that you're integrating and having the conversation with your real estate folks, bring your HR folks in, focus on the experience.
Yeah.
To your point on what's that space really used for?
Right.
How do you optimize the space, provide the best experience? And then the real estate folks to really understand the utilization.
Right.
And, do you have a lot of rooms, which traditionally everything was sort of these large meeting rooms, right? And they realize on average 4 to 6 people are using them.
Yeah.
So how do you repurpose that and make sure everybody has the right experience available? So yeah, have those conversations internally, and you'll notice a lot of opportunity there to sort of save money.
And that drives one of the other questions I had was around the designing of the office space itself. Like we're all, for the most people part, I think IT leaders within your organization that you support, but we're also seeing this merging of IT and the facilities side of it. If you look around like Cisco, what you've done in New York as well as in San Jose to show what an office could be, and you start looking some of the SHI capabilities and facilities, especially down in our Austin office, we've done a lot of things to create purpose-built spaces, everything from a focus room, which could be the size of a telephone booth if you just need to take a quick call, to a huddle room for 2 or 3 people, to the small, medium, and large and extra large formal spaces, but then also creating those informal spaces within your office environment so people can just collaborate on the fly. Maybe there's a whiteboard in there, and maybe there's a display in there and a camera in there, but making it so that you can just have those conversations, because people typically are coming back to the office for more of the experience around collaborating with their colleagues there. So I don't know, Dominic, what are you seeing when you talk to your customers out there when it comes to the designing the spaces and making sure it's going to be supportive?
Yeah, I think that's been the number one challenge, is that, especially as people have worked from home the last couple of years, a lot of people invested in their own equipment.
Right.
Right. They went and they said, hey, I want to buy a standing desk. I'm one of those people that bought a standing desk, and it was fantastic, and it's changed my life. We're now starting to see organizations, SHI included, that a standing desk is standard issued equipment in the office. Why? Because people love that.
Right.
So, it's just become, hey, that's the standard. So meeting and understanding what people are looking for in their collaboration space, both here and at home, makes a difference. So thinking through that. And I think as you're starting to look at the younger generations, and to your point, like those spots to collaborate, it's interesting when you go to visit customers and they have soft seating areas.
Yes. Yeah.
They've got couches.
Yeah.
And it's really, and they've got meeting equipment even with some of those couches, but it's definitely changing. It's not the starchy boardroom that we're used to seeing.
Right.
And it's now becoming a little bit more of an experience. It's a little bit more relaxed.
Yes.
And it seems weird to a lot of us, especially a lot of us that have grown up in the old starchy boardrooms.
Yep.
But you know what? If you've experienced it yourself, I seem to collaborate a little bit better in those spaces.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
that's interesting, showing that. So we actually found at Cisco, so we've got all these showcase offices, right? So we've got Penn One in New York, we've got Atlanta, Santana Row in California, and a couple others, right? Paris was another big one that we just launched. And Paris was interesting. We took a historic building, so there are things we couldn't do, right? But we had to sort of enable it. And the other thing we sort of are focusing on is one, it doesn't have to be tech intensive, right? It's purely about the experience. So I wouldn't focus on making sure that tech's visible. Actually, if it's not, it's actually a good thing, right? It's sort of just the ability for you to walk in, join a meeting seamlessly, and be done with it. But the other one we discovered is actually in our New York office when we did this, right? So we had these sort of open spaces with couches and stuff, thinking, hey, all the Gen X's or Gen Z's, et cetera. And we found no one used them.
Really?
We actually found that people preferred to go into a room because of privacy, because of whatever it was, right? So we have technology that allows you to sort of block out people from a video perspective, et cetera, but we actually discovered that it wasn't being utilized.
Right.
So we're now rethinking whether we should focus more on smaller spaces, right, where you can actually close the door or have walls for people to collaborate. So still want to do it,
right?
They still want to collaborate, but they just don't want this open space, which was an interesting finding for us.
Right. Oh, that is interesting. Okay, so we got about 4 minutes left here. So I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned a couple of things earlier, but some of the AI capabilities that you're seeing today and what you're expecting to see in the future when you think of the translation and the transcription and some of those things that you're seeing at the platform level, but on both companies. So from a Microsoft perspective and a WebEx perspective, so Dominic, excuse me.
Yeah. So obviously translation is huge. A lot of companies are global. So many of you are supporting people all across the world. So the real-time translation has been fantastic to be able to use transcription and be able to actually translate with live captions. Now, it is machine translation, so sometimes it's not exactly perfect, but it's a lot better, and it's bridging a lot of gaps for organizations, which I think is fantastic. And then just seeing how AI is just starting to move forward. So Copilot with agentic AI, the future is going to be, we have action items that's going to find its way into a planner board or into to-do, so that way you know what actions you have there assigned to you, much like we saw with Viva Insights years ago with email. And then if anyone's played with Copilot Actions, there's actually some tools in there that allow you to use Copilot to do the follow-ups for you. So you don't have to be the annoying person. You can just say, hey, it'll stop anytime. Just complete your action item and it'll be done, right?
Absolutely.
So, but I think seeing that full progression of being able to take what did we do in the meeting, build the action items, and do the follow-ups, and allow me to focus on the more important things, that's going to be that's the game changer.
Agreed. Okay, product.
I think for us, this is one of those areas where we sort of we're a Cisco WebEx shop. We do everything that we talk about on the Microsoft side of it, right? It's very similar. So we do meeting captures, follow-ups, action items, all AI based. We also have AI agentic from a contact center perspective. We also have other sort of things built into our management platforms. We can sort of using AI and actual language to say, hey, which one of my rooms are having issues, et cetera, right? So that's sort of there. And then you sort of switch over to Teams. It makes it really interesting too, because now everything that's going to end up coming from a Microsoft perspective runs on a Cisco device as well, right? So you'll have that sort of in-room experience if you're running native Teams rooms, and then you also have the sort of Cisco AI components running on the back end as well. So it's a nice blend. There's going to be some overlap from time to time, but again, depending upon where you're at and which platform you sort of decide to go native on, that's the one you lead with, right? So if, for example, you're running native Microsoft Teams rooms on a Cisco device, you'll end up using Copilot. But if you're running WebEx, then obviously all our AI capabilities are built in to essentially allow you to do all of that as well.
That makes sense. So product, what are you looking for in the future? Where do you want to see this go next? What problems could it solve for you?
To me, it's, I mean, I think the number one ask, and I think all our customers have this, right, is twofold. One is making that ability to join any meeting platform super seamless and easy. So regardless of where you are in the world, just being to walk in a room, touch a button, be done. Right? Or frankly, walk in with a laptop, open it up, and either through AirPlay or Miracast or whatever, just join wirelessly and do that, right? So, by the way, AirPlay is coming to us in another month or two, if you guys are Apple fans. And then the second one is management, right? That's the biggest ask we've had from customers saying, hey, we're multi-platform, right? We've got Logis, we've got Polys, we've got Crestron, but we're sort of moving back to Cisco. Is there an opportunity for us to sort of look at all of that under one lens? And sadly, we don't have it yet. But that's one of my sort of things where I'd love to sort of see how the industry moves to a point where you can manage everybody, pull through it. But at the end of the day, I think, listen, I'd say Cisco's back, right? So pre-COVID, we sort of were really dominant in this space. Post-COVID, I think it took us a little while to figure things out. But where we are today, we're feeling really good. We've got amazing products, amazing AI, amazing investments. we've organized the company as a whole under one chief product officer with G2, and that's going to really help sort of integrate our entire platform story as well.
Great.
So from a one Cisco perspective, it's a great bet. So definitely reach out to SHI, reach out to your Cisco team, and we'd sort of love to do more business with you
Great.
guys. So.
And on that note, I'll go ahead and throw up a QR code. So if you do want to learn more about how SHI and Cisco and Microsoft can help you with meeting room solutions, please click on this QR code here, reach out to your sales rep, and we'd love to help you. So thank you all for your time. Thank you to the panel here. I appreciate you guys spending the time with me.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.
Sir.